Hey everyone, I'm Shaun Hagen, CEO of CartonCloud, and this is the very first episode of TWIL, This Week in Logistics. So, what is TWIL? It's a short weekly breakdown of what actually matters in logistics. Not just headlines, not just hype, but what happened, why it matters, and what operators should actually do next. And this show is intended for 3PL owners and operators, other warehouse operators, transport teams, any other supply chain leaders, basically people running real operations, making real decisions under real pressure. And each week, we'll take a chance to have a look at the signals shaping logistics across Australia, New Zealand, and North America, as well as looking more broadly across the globe, and we'll break them down from an operator's perspective. Now, this week's a special one, and not just because it's our first episode. I've just returned from Manifest, the Future of Supply Chain conference in Las Vegas, and it gave us a live, on-the-ground look of where logistics technology is actually heading, and I'm really excited to share some insights with you guys today. So today we'll have a look at what Manifest revealed, the AI shockwave that hit logistics stocks last week, and the Supreme Court ruling on Trump-era tariffs, and what that means for trade. So let's get into it. So after 4 years of attending Manifest, I would say the vibe has officially shifted. It's no longer just about the cool factor of quadruped robots or the precision of autonomous drones. It's about why those tools aren't in more warehouses yet. And the emphasis around AI and automation has moved from the hype phase to the execution phase. Last year, the conversation was mostly still theoretical, especially as it related to AI. This year, it was, here's what's actually been deployed on the ground. Here's what's working and here's what's not. And here's where we're seeing ROI on those investments. One of the really interesting insights that was shared in Manifest was the latest DHL 2030 Insight report provided a massive reality check, I think, for the industry. And despite years of that hype phase, only 44% of large enterprises have actually deployed warehouse robotics. And that's a survey that primarily focused on the largest operators in the industry. And even among those leaders, only 34% are fully satisfied with the current technology that they use. So that was probably the reality check. But what about the excitement and the more optimistic side of things? And I think that the point solution pivot is slowly changing the game. And that really came through as you walked around the floor. The most exciting development this year isn't just the hardware, it's how AI is enabling intelligent plug-and-play solutions across the supply chain. And Vincent, our co-founder at CartonCloud, got hands-on with one of those new picking systems. And what stood out wasn't just capability, it's the potential for rapid deployment speed, where we're no longer talking about three-year transformation roadmaps, warehouse execution, warehouse control systems. We're talking more modular robotics, which enable rapid integration, and that therefore operators can get layered automation over existing warehouse processes. So probably my three big takeaways for operators from Manifest is, firstly, that implementation is more important than innovation. There are a bunch of providers there who have innovative solutions, but the ones that are going to make the biggest impact are the ones that are solving real world problems that impact the bottom line. So that first wave of robotics and AI that will be most likely to impact your businesses aren't the ones that are going to need a full warehouse redesign. They're the ones that will be point solutions to address a single high-friction task, such as automated inventory counts or picking or packing, with minimal integration hurdles. The second is, in spite of, I think, the data in the DHL Insight report, the ROI inflection point is certainly approaching. While 2030 feels very far away, the convergence of robotics as a service and AI-driven orchestration is making a 12-month ROI a near-term reality for a lot of mid-market players. And I think that's also going to reduce the upfront investment that's required to take advantage of those solutions. And then thirdly, data is the prerequisite. You can't automate what you haven't digitized. And the execution gap that we see in operators and that we were hearing about at the conference usually starts with messy data or legacy systems, not a lack of robot. So let's have a chat about AI now, because something quite interesting happened last week. A major AI capability announcement specifically around predictive autonomous routing triggered a pretty sharp sell-off in traditional logistics and automation stocks. And that really highlights that investors are panicking, and it tells you something important. And that is that markets are trying to price in the future of logistics operations and the futures of logistics execution. When a new AI capability suggests that it could displace traditional freight workflows, whether that's forecasting, pricing, or dispatching, markets react immediately. But I'd probably say that from my perspective, here's the operator lens, which is that stock market volatility is not necessarily the same as operational change. And undoubtedly, AI will reshape logistics. It's going to reshape being a software company as well, but it won't flip the switch overnight. And I think what we saw at Manifest really reinforced that. The winners are not building generic AI. They're embedding domain-trained or role-specific intelligence directly into the execution in their workflows, whether that's decision support or autonomous actions. It's not just another dashboard for your team to check, and that's not AI. That's just more noise. We need to really focus, I think, our attention as an industry on AI that actually does the work or improves the work, not just AI that shows the work. And if your AI lives in a separate dashboard, it really highlights that adoption stalls, whereas if it lives inside real-world workflows, it scales. And I think that's the main difference for operators. But we're very interested to see any future AI announcements and any impact they have on existing operations. Shifting gears a little bit, because while we're talking about AI and robotics, last week the US Supreme Court recently sort of announced that they had struck down the certain Trump-era tariffs as unlawful. Now, obviously, that's quite a major development because for the last couple of years, tariffs have influenced everything from cross-border pricing to carrier routing, nearshoring, inventory positioning, and whilst the ruling had the immediate effect of lowering the average tariff rate from 12.8% to 8.3%. But industry experts were correctly warning us, don't celebrate just yet. And we saw Trump respond almost immediately, announcing 10% tariffs under a totally different provision, which was subsequently raised to 15% in the days after the Supreme Court ruling. So unfortunately, what does that mean? It means we're entering another period of trade recalibration. Now, luckily, we've had a bit of experience in this over the last 12 to 18 months. But what does it mean for operators? Firstly, uncertainty is likely to continue. Trade policy changes don't create instant clarity. They create renegotiation and recalibration cycles. And we're entering a period of sourcing paralysis where making long-term decisions is becoming really challenging when you can only make assumption about tariffs for some vendors, but not others. So especially for shippers and vendors and manufacturers, that has a compounding effect in terms of their ability to plan confidently into the future. Secondly, contract reviews. I think it's reasonable that shippers will have to reassess landed costs and review the impact of this uncertainty and the changes on their own business and forecasted volumes. And it's likely that 3PLs will subsequently be asked to revisit pricing structures and volume commitments, and it might require additional flexibility throughout 2026 as things continue to sort of unfold and change. And thirdly, systems and data are likely to matter even more. Whilst the average tariff rate might stay close to where it was, it's mostly the mechanism that has changed so far. And we're moving from country-based tariffs to commodity-based tariffs, which means that your information systems and data sets such as your HTS codes are likely to become even more important for anyone shipping into the US. So, whilst trade stability or lack thereof affects network design, and the tech headlines grab attention, these trade policy shifts is what affects real freight flows in the industry. So I think taking sort of the lens for winners, I think are clearly going to be the operators who don't necessarily have the most robots or AI agents or the ones who guessed correctly on the tariff ruling. They'll be the ones who can respond the fastest. And this was something that became very clear at Manifest, which is that visibility is now table stakes for all players in the supply chain. And orchestration is really the next frontier, where visibility answers what's happening now and orchestration answers what should happen next. And once you move from seeing to acting, I think that's where operators start to protect margin and create value for customers. And that's where very clearly the industry is heading. So making this practical, if you're running a 3PL or warehouse operation, chase the constraint, not the hype. Focus on finding your bottleneck and focus your automation and efficiency efforts there. Integrate before you automate, because disconnected tools create friction and they don't solve real problems. And that sort of leads straight into embedding AI directly within workflows, so not requiring extra dashboards or distractions. And finally, I think investing in that orchestration capability is going to be crucial for being future compatible, where the future isn't about more data, it's about smarter execution. And those themes really came through strongly at Manifest, which didn't just show a sci-fi future, it showed a maturing industry that's getting smarter, more integrated and more execution focused. But I think the other thing to really highlight is that fundamentals still win. Clean processes, strong data and operational disciplines really separate the haves and have-nots, because technology amplifies good operations. It does not fix broken ones. And that's really what TWIL is also about. Each week, we're going to come together, we'll break down the signals, cut through the noise, and focus on what actually moves the operation forward and give you a little snapshot into what's happening in your industry. Thank you very much for joining me for episode 1. If this was useful, share it. And if you've got topics you want covered next week, please let me know. This has been This Week in Logistics, and we'll see you next week.